Hi, welcome to Challenge the Fabric 2018. We're here for a panel discussion this evening about creativity, innovation, new materials and sustainable fashion. My name's Becky Earley. I'm Professor of Sustainable Fashion Textile Design at University of the Arts London. I'm co-director of Centre for Circular Design, and I'm here to moderate the discussion. And I've got four fantastic panelists this evening. So I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and they're going to answer the question, how are they currently working in a really creative and innovative way towards sustainable fashion? Ursula.
My name is Ursula Castro, and I'm the co-founder and creative director at Fashion Revolution. I'm also a visiting fellow at Central St. Martin's, and I mentor several young designers. So I guess I have my head in many hats. And primarily, I think, with Fashion Revolution, we have become, in the last 5 years, the biggest fashion activism in the world. And we really advocate a different relationship in the fashion industry, not just in a campaigning way, but for designers, for academics, for brands, for governments. And I think we've been a very inclusive campaign, and we've raised the bar when it comes to citizens becoming more curious and doing things personally towards being a part of the change. And I think that this includes a higher level of information, people becoming much more aware of the social and environmental impact of the fashion industry as a whole. And of course, looking for solutions that can be applicable throughout the fashion supply chain. So from the way that, that the garment workers or the supply chain workers, their lives are made better, but also how we as individuals can take part.
And Fashion Revolution, the whole campaign has been incredibly creative. You've reached hundreds of millions of people through really quite, your graphics and your messaging and your online presence. So you have used creativity to make a change, haven't you?
Well, how can you make a change into a creative industry if you're not creative? I mean, Fashion Revolution really wanted to speak a fashion language. Without that, it's impossible to make a difference and to be heard. It's like arriving into a country and not speaking the local language. So we also speak the dialect even. But yes, creativity is one of our main vehicle to reach people. So we use it.
Thank you, Ursula, and welcome.
Thanks.
Per.
Hello, my name is Per, and I'm a menswear designer and also a associate lecturer at London College of Fashion. I'm based in London. I produce in London, and we do a range of products in organic materials. We do a lot of denim, where we have a draping technique which allows us to sort of have zero waste, and in our knitwear it's always fully fashioned and no waste, and we also make accessories out of waste. So yeah, trying to do my bit. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Maria?
And I'm Maria. I'm the Director of Communications and Sustainability at Södra. And Södra is a forest industry association. So I'm not in the fashion industry, even though we supply dissolving pulp, textile pulp to our customers. And they produce viscose, which is a cellulose fiber, which they make fashion out of. And the way we use creativity is in several ways. We are an industry, we have production. So we're mainly doing pulp and for paper, and dissolving pulp for textile. We also produce sawn timber, but now we have some more new sort of materials like renewable energy and biofuel and stuff, which is also the resource is from forest, from trees. So, and that's where the creativity comes, to find new materials and new products from wood.
Yeah, it's actually incredible, isn't it, what can be made from wood pulp.
Yeah,
I had no idea until I visited a research lab in Sweden and saw the thinnest but clearest and strongest sort of plastic film. I couldn't believe that it could come from a tree.
So we think that nearly all the materials that are today fossil material can be replaced by wood or tree.
Trees of the future.
So paper instead of plastic, and wood instead of concrete, and so on. Yeah.
More of that later.
Yeah.
Brigitte.
Hello, my name is Brigitte Stepputtis. I work for Vivienne Westwood, and my title is Head of Couture, although I'm also involved in the sustainability and cooperate within the company with all the various departments. As you all know, Vivienne is a political campaigner and very engaged with climate change, and is at the moment very creative in terms of business. She has reduced quite a few of her collections, because one of her mantra is quality versus quantity. In my department, where the couture comes into, we try to promote the idea through our dressing, our work with celebrities for red carpet, green dress, to get the idea out there in the glamorous world.
Yes, it's a shame we can't have Vivienne to contribute as well to the conversation, to sort of hear her personal politics, but it's brilliant that we can talk about materials today and design and where sustainability is heading and all the things that are needed to really promote these activities more broadly, especially with the younger generations and the emerging designers. And we saw a fantastically creative show earlier with extraordinary collections from these award nominees and the ultimate award winner. It's fantastic. How can we have more young designers engaging with sustainability, taking these ideas on and really using the problems that the industry is creating as the driving force for creativity?
Me? Anyway. Well, I actually think that, at least in my experience, not just with Fashion Revolution, but with mentoring and being teaching and lecturing internationally, there is a huge desire when it comes to young designers to really employ sustainability. They're not like our generation, where we kind of thought the world was going to go on and on and on. I mean, these guys wake up in the morning and they don't know what the state of the planet will be in 80, 100, 120, 150 years. So for them, it's much more about survival than it is just a kind of a passing trend or a fad. And they are, I feel, really incorporating some solutions in their creative design, so using their design skills as creative solutions for environmental challenges. I do think, though, that somehow maybe because sustainability and technology, to a certain extent, it's a new science, they're not being taught enough. There's not enough for them to really discover at school, so more can be done to put them in touch with better materials and solutions.
Well, it's a hugely complex field, as we all know, and so to sort of give them enough information to make informed decisions is a real challenge. We have to teach students how to make textiles, how to make clothing, how to market themselves, to understand the big machine of the fashion industry, and they've got to embrace sustainability as well. So
increase the awareness.
It's a lot to take on, isn't it? How was your experience?
I think fashion needs to be also about passion, intuition, and I think for me personally, this sort of sustainable angle of my business is kind of happened naturally, because I guess I've been quite resourceful always and drawn to kind of trash, I guess. So together with my partner Ursula, we're doing these kind of waste accessories, and also in my draping techniques. It was sort of an after idea, I guess, that actually we're not creating any waste here. So I think this whole, it's so high tech, you have to kind of know, I don't know, that needs to be bridged, I think, to the in education, to students, and to kind of make that happen quick.
Do you think there's been a focus sort of too much on new technology and rather than other values?
Maybe. I think creativity as a headline is for a designer is obviously going to be more appealing. But I don't know. I think that's the general sort of I mean, I'm just kind of making things I like, I guess, and then, you know, as you start your business, you start to think about these things and how can you make a difference. So for students, I think there needs to be, to know more like creative lead on these type of questions.
So if we have a problem in the fashion industry and it's hugely creative, we need creativity to solve these problems. And I think that's what this award has been about. What do you guys think? How can we get more of the next generation of fashion designers engaged?
I think, at least in Sweden, I think like 5 years ago, there is a law, so it's mandatory to study sustainability at school. I think like it can be 4 or 6 years, so that's quite recently. But I think, as you said as well, I think the younger generation, they are really aware, because they need to live in their, you know, now with the climate change and everything. So I think they really want to change the world to a better place for both for the environment and society and so on. So I think they already have the commitment and the engagement, but then I think they are fumbling on how to do it, and only that you can make clothes from trees, for example. Maybe not that many people are aware of it, and then so I think we need to increase the awareness of renewable material and so on.
Yeah, so you're saying that the willingness is there, the ambition is there, the kind of desire to make a positive contribution in the future is there, but maybe they don't know enough about materials, they don't know exactly the right decisions to make.
I find it important to actually educate them more about, because sustainability is not only to use organic fabrics or certain fibers. It's also about to support the local industry. So we always have Harris tweed from Scotland, tartan from Scotland in our collection. This is also part of it. Regarding or how the supply chain works, with all the changes at the moment, we work now within one collection in a facility where the fabric gets woven and made all at the same place. So it all becomes, so this is also part of it, as well as materials. With the materials, again, they would like to do a lot, but there is not much information there. It's not very transparent, especially with viscose.
Okay, we're going to get on to talking about viscose in a minute, because what we want to understand, I think, is what we currently see as sustainable materials. What are we using, and what are we saying this is a good material? What are we telling the next generation it's good to select? Second-hand, waste, zero waste, they're all good approaches as well. But what materials and what material stories can we promote? And I think then we're going to talk about where viscose fits into that, and how we can understand a material that comes from wood and can be reprocessed and sort of fit into this range of organic cottons or recycled polyesters. What are your favourite materials?
I mean, I like waste. I think that's I think it's quite like funny to have a very pragmatic, like that's how I am naturally, you know, as a designer. But then what you said, like how viscose would fit into that world. I've been looking at these documentaries about landfill, and like all this stuff from the 60s and 80s are still there. So I would be really interested in to see how you can actually, after a made garment, repurpose those fibers into new yarns. I think I would be really interested to see.
So there's a kind of recycling which is taking materials that are still intact and piecing them together, but there's also the regeneration of materials and the actual sort of producing of new fibres from those old textiles. Okay.
Well, I actually like waste too. In fact, in my previous incarnation, when I was a designer, I was known as the queen of upcycling, embarrassingly enough. But I have to say, we can't, there is never one solution, and what we need to do is just open our eyes and discover and look for more.
Be resourceful.
Be resourceful and also be prepared. Be prepared to make mistakes. Sometimes the technologies that we discover don't work and they're discredited a few years later. But look back in order to move forward, understanding that technology is, and innovation are linked to the future but also to the past. And in my personal opinion, it is really about being more curious and finding out more, because this is a moment in the industry in which we have to be resourceful as individuals. And so if there is anything that we can do to affiliate ourselves to a fabric and somehow adopt a fabric rather than stick to the ones that we're constantly told, then we need to be imaginative and discover as much as we can.
We need a broad palette, don't we? And we need to understand more about this idea of appropriateness, which materials suit which function and which garment much more, and not put our kind of oil-based materials like polyester into garments that are meant to be worn only for 6 weeks, because that makes no sense at all. So we've got to sort of be able to explain and understand the palette of materials and keep that selection broad. So Vivienne Westwood, you choose heritage materials quite often, like working with the Harris tweed, but what others are your favourites?
Vivienne likes at the moment very much unbleached wool, so you get a broad spectrum, anything between ivory and black, and also hemp, because it's indestructible. So what we try to do is educate not only the sales staff and the designers, but also the consumers. We try to label them and explain shortly why these fibers are especially good, or what is inspired by the choice of them.
So you do quite a lot to communicate the materials to the
Try,
consumer.
yeah. Also via social media and Facebook website.
Yeah. Because I think it's quite a difficult thing to do, is to sort of engage consumers around materials. They quite often, research shows that they go for colour and pattern and shape, all of those things, and price, all of those things first before they'll even look at a content label. So there's quite a lot of, a distance to go really. But we need to talk about materials, because we're going to run out of some materials. We're going to run out of the ability to sort of clothe people in a single material. There's this thing called the fibre gap. Does anybody want to talk about the fibre gap? Talk about cotton and food, because we actually are facing a crisis of resources.
Well, not only we're facing a crisis of resources, we know that cotton, particularly conventional cotton, is one of the most detrimental processes to both people and the environment that frankly we all share. So
but that's still shocking to people though, isn't it? Because
but the conversation around cotton is confusing, is misleading. As you say quite rightly, the conversation around material is narrow. And we need to open it up. We need to open it up to, as I said, the past and the future. What we already had, in terms of hemp, for instance, it was endemic as far as Europe was concerned, and then suddenly disappeared. We can't even plant it anymore, and now it's innovative. And we need to broaden this conversation hugely, and we need to do it via experiments and attracting students, attracting designers, but attracting ourselves, attracting consumers, because we really do need to, the fashion industry has been feeding us, trends fast, quick, but little knowledge. We need to really increase our knowledge to make those informed choices. Our wardrobes are in the fashion supply chain. Every morning we have a chance to make a positive difference via the clothes that we choose.
So let's talk about the material of viscose and the fact that it comes from wood. Maria, you had a nice sample there. I want everybody to have a feel of that.
So this is what the material of the dissolving or textile pulp looks like when it leaves our production.
So I'm going to do the idiot's guide to viscose just for the viewers, just in case they don't know. And then you can all chip in and correct me. But the way it works is you take trees, you make wood chips, you then put that into a solvent and you get a pulp, and you dissolve it and you effectively extrude a new fibre, a bit like spaghetti making, I'm led to believe, and that fibre is viscous.
Yeah.
With a few kind of other bits of technology in there, that's the fibre that we're talking about, isn't it?
It is. This is cellulose, yeah.
So the fact that we can get this material that feels quite like cotton, but comes from trees.
And feels like paper as well when it leaves us, yeah. But I think we need to, well, going back to your last question, I think it's really difficult to be a consumer. If you want to buy sustainable clothing, it's not that easy. So I bought this dress last week. I wanted to have a 100% viscose, as we're going to be here discussing it, and it wasn't easy. So I went into stores and I asked for viscose, and the persons working in the store, they weren't even aware of which dresses they had, like in viscose and so on. So it's not that easy. So I think when this fabric leaves us, it's certified, so it's a sustainable material. But then there's so many different steps along the value chain until it reaches the designer and also the consumer, of course.
And how does that value chain look? Is there innovation, sustainable innovation going on in that whole sort of chain that leads through to the material?
Not the whole way, no. So there's so many different steps. So when it leaves us, it's certified. So it's both FSC and PFC certified. And nearly all the dissolving pulp, it's like 70-80% of our customers are, and they are really demanding. They are asking for certified pulp. But then it's their customers and their customers' customers and so on. So they are not really demanding it, and then the companies don't supply it. So it's the supply and demand. So I think we need to demand more certified, renewable, sustainable material along the whole value chain. But then we need to increase the awareness at the end customer.
Sure. Yeah. But it's about putting pressure on people to ask for this kind of...
Well, it's about putting pressure on brands to publish the information, because frankly what we do need is transparency. I mean, I as a consumer want to be able to go to a website of a brand and find out exactly where their materials come from, and in what conditions they are extracted, and all the way up to the garment workers and so on and so forth. Actually, there was a very interesting story when it came to viscose recently, because a terrible supply chain was exposed in China, and because of transparency, because the brands that were using this supply chain had it published that they were using them, things were ameliorated quickly. So it goes to show that although the fashion industry is shredded in mystery, and that's its primary culture, we need to effect precisely the kind of culture change that will allow the fashion industry to be transparent, to communicate about their materials, their people, their processes, all the way down to the third tier, which is the raw materials of the raw origin, the provenance of the raw materials.
And that's true of all materials being supplied to the fashion industry. We need more transparency, we need more
traceability.
Traceability, absolutely. Is there some concern around trees and forests? Are we going to be chopping everything down so that we can have loads more clothes? Are people concerned?
Absolutely, yeah. So, but now I can only talk for like Sweden and the Nordic countries, and because we are having this sustainable management, so we run our forest in a sustainable way. So for every tree we cut down, we plant three new, and but it's the whole aspect of sustainability. So we need to secure the regeneration, but also the biodiversity in the forests, and also that they produce, that the trees grow, because they are also a great absorber of CO2 emissions, and so trees and forests are. We need to have them in order for us to get oxygen. So. But sustainable management forestry is, we can really rely on that. But then we know that some parts of the world is not that sustainable.
Yeah. But you're managing at the moment your supply and your product developments in Sweden through a kind of sustainable forestry policy.
Yeah.
And is that what Södra does? Is that?
Yeah, so that's what we do, and we cooperate with other universities and academics and customers and so on. Yeah. That's also right. It's quite fun for me to be here, to take part in the fashion industry and hear your views, because I think we all need to learn from each other, and I think it goes both ways.
Good. So, what about the future? What about what's happening next? The circular economy and recyclability. How are we going to make our materials more recyclable? What's your idea of circular design?
Well, you know, I'm a firm believer that technology will save us, but equally I am slightly concerned about the fact that we're not there yet. And while we're not there yet, nobody is putting up their hands and saying, we're going to slow down, we're going to look at a more moderate production and a more mindful consumption. We are producing approximately 150 billion garments of clothing per year. There is no way we can absorb that. I mean, you know, as far as you were saying, you know, we know that there's things in landfill from, you know, basically we think we can throw things away, there is no away. So I see the future as a future will, you know, the technology will come, the designing for circularity will happen. But in the meantime, personally, I am interested in interim solutions. So I am interested in waste and upcycling and potentially upscaling that to as far as it can go, potentially with upcycling lines in factories and creative waste managers. But we have to look at every solutions that we've got, because you know, the future is not that far away unless we do something pretty drastic right now. And I think having inhabited this kind of sustainability place for quite a while, I do strongly feel that we've had plenty of conversations and now it's time to act.
Yeah. Well, you're acting all the time, I think, through Fashion Revolution and the things that you're doing, and having a great influence because you're making it your aim to communicate what's needed and actually sort of go for the change. But what you said, Brigitte, as well, with Vivienne Westwood cutting down the range of collections, there's an example of somebody who is committing to less range and more high quality, long lasting clothes.
Yeah, Vivienne also is campaigning for less, a bit more conscious consumption. Choose well and make it last. And in fact, a lot of Westwood clients do exactly that. They have a lot of pieces with their life, and some of it is passed down to the children, or you can also give it to auction, give it a second life on eBay or other channels. There are plenty more now to do so. And also from the design point of view, to design something which is fashionable but also iconic and is always good.
Always
It doesn't get out of fashion.
Got a great resale value on eBay. My goodness me. It's like an investment. Would you ever be taking back clothes, reselling them yourself, or would you ever take your product back and reprocess, regenerate those fibres and sort of try and close the loop as a company more? Or
we are not fabric producers. What we are trying to do is, our fabric researchers are always asking about certifications, especially with viscose. Where does it come from? Do you know it doesn't get produced in protected rainforests? We've chosen joined Canopy, who has been very active on that front. But it is really a bit of a jungle out there with the fabric producers. It's really terribly difficult, and all we can do is pushing it. You know, you can ask for recycling fibers to, let's say, recycled cashmere to make new sweaters, but we are not producing fabric as ourselves.
yeah, but it's all about the collaborations, isn't it, and the partnerships that I think everybody has to build now to achieve more sustainable fashion. What about you, Per? What does the future hold for you? Are you going to be producing more recycled
Yeah, I think I really agree with you, Andrew. I think it's about, you know, making iconic, desirable pieces, but I really think it's about being resourceful. And I think people understand that, you know, waste can be desirable and elegant and iconic. And yeah, I think it's for designers, it's sort of, and for students, it's really about sort of looking what can we like dig up the landfills, I think.
Dig up the landfill.
Yeah.
Go back when we run out of oil. Go back in and dig up all the plastic bags.
Yeah.
Mining for plastics,
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get there.
What do you see as the future for viscose?
I think it's really positive. We have more and more customers asking for viscose. But there's also like a war of trees out there, because as we have all these mega trends, and more sectors are looking into renewable material, so like for biofuel and different things, and renewable energy, and then also renewable clothing or sustainable clothing, sustainable material. So, but there are a lot of forests out there, a lot of trees, so we can absolutely produce much more viscose in the world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we have to marry up cleaner, better production with creativity and with really good design and desirable products, and be more aware as consumers.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.